as a band, I think that we were really in tune with each other. Tom, just an incredible songwriter.
Oh, welcome back to Extraordinary Drummer Show. My guest today, I tell you, you're talking about don't need an introduction. My guest today, you just say, here is, you know. He's actually a drummer's drummer. He's actually a legend. His credits includes from Tom Petty to Anita Baker to Whitney Houston, Paul Simon, on and on and on, which we'll talk about here shortly. Will you help me welcome my guest today, my man, Steve Ferrone. Hey, Steve. Hey, brother.
That was pretty good. Try it again. Just talk about the good looks.
Add some more credits. I kept it short because that could have been a long one, boy. How you been, man?
I've been pretty good. I've been pretty much here. I haven't really moved from here too much in the past 6 months, I guess. I mean, I've just been here. So the first thing I did was upgrade my studio, so that the engineer could engineer me from Long Beach. So that's pretty cool. We got that down now.
How you holding up with this COVID situation and this quarantine and stuff?
Well, I've been holding up. I mean, very well. I mean, I've just been very prudent. I mean, I have friends come over that I know are prudent, and that I've known for years, and they pop by every once in a while, or we go visit them, or come over for dinner. We have dinner in the backyard, and basically been working out of the studio.
Tell me, how did you start playing drums? When did you know you wanted to be a drummer? What age were you?
Well, I was 12. I mean, I tap danced. I started tap dancing when I was about 3. My parents took me and started me tap dancing, and then of course, the Beatles and the Stones sort of started to happen in Big in England, and I was when I was about 10 in the 60s, and then all of a sudden one day they had a band came. It was Manfred Mann's Earth Band came down, and they were playing that night in the dance hall. That we had a noon, our morning little kids dance thing with a disc jockey, and this band were going to play. Manfred Mann was going to play that night in the club, and they played like 3 or 4 songs for soundcheck just for us little kids, and all the girls in there just went crazy. I mean, they were like, oh, just screaming after these guys, And I turned around to my friends and I said, we need to make a band. And I'd learnt the mechanics of drumming from watching a drummer. I'd actually got a part when I was 12 in a summer show, and I'd go on stage and we'd have these different things that we'd have to do. One of them was it was the twist. They had all the little kids were doing the twist with this, the big star of the show. And I looked down into the drum pit, and I saw the guy, playing. I thought, oh, how's he doing that with his hands? So I went and practiced doing it. So I kind of figured out how to play the drums, and so checked out what the feet were doing, and I figured that out. And then the next thing I learned was take 5.
Wow.
Let's just go straight to something complicated.
Yeah.
So that was the next beat that I learned.
Do you remember when you got your first drum kit?
Well, I had when I was a tiny little kid, maybe like 5 or 6, they got me a toy drum kit. I had a toy drum kit as well. It's what I used to play. I used to play on. It was like shoved in a cupboard somewhere, I had this little drum kit that I used to bash on, that used to let me beat on a little bit. Yeah, I mean, my first, I have a photograph of my first show that I did ever. Somebody sent me a photograph of my first gig ever, and I had this bass drum that was like gigantic. It must have been like a 28-inch bass drum. I had to put it off to the side, it was sort of over here, and then I had the tom-tom, which was a converted snare drum. I had a big, deep sort of marching drum, and I took the snares off of that, and I used that as a tom-tom. And I had a little skinny snare drum. I think that might have been the guys who owned the bass drum, and really crappy cymbals and everything. But that was the first. Kit that I had.
Tell me about working with Bloodstone and Oblivion Express.
Well, Bloodstone was came after Oblivion Express. I'd lived in Europe for about 6 years, and Italy and France. I went to school in France, and then I came back and started. I got a call from Brian Auger, who I'd met in a club there, and we had friends in common. Robbie McIntosh, who played with Brian Auger from Average White, the original Average White Band drummer, and Alex Eaglewood sang with him, and he called me up in the south of France and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm just here in the south of France. Been working in a casino and going to school." And he said, "Well, I'm going to go to America. Do you want to come with me?" And I said, "Yeah." So he said, "Well, you got about 3 days, and then we're going to leave." So I had to pack up everything, and I got a replacement for me in the band at the casino. Packed up all my stuff, sold my car, sold stuff that was there, some stuff that was there, and jumped on a plane, went to England, and started working with Brian Auger. And then came 3 days later. A couple of days later, I was in New York looking
I can imagine.
looking at gigantic buildings. It was a big culture shock.
Tell me about the. I'm sorry to say, after the death of McIntosh, you joined AWB. I'm kind of jumping around a little bit here, but you joined AWB. How did that come about?
Well, what had happened was I'd started doing sessions in London. When I went back to England after that first tour, I started doing sessions. I started to play with a bunch of studio guys called Gonzalez, and that band was playing at Ronnie Scott's, and I was playing with them when Mike Vernon, who was a producer at that time, walked in and said, "I want this band, and I want them to play with Freddie King." And so my first studio musician gig was a Burglar album with Freddie King as a fully fledged studio musician. That was it. That was my first gig. And then he came over here to produce Bloodstone, and then asked me to come over and be the drummer on Bloodstone stuff. So I came over and did that. So and then after that, Average White Band were here, and Robbie passed away, and I was sort of living here at the time. And then Ahmed Erdogan told me that I had to join Average White Band, and I was sitting in doing gigs. Me and Stick Super, if I could make it, Sticks would do it, and we'd go and play these gigs to keep Average White Band afloat. And then Ahmed, we played a gig at Long Beach, and Ahmed said, this little guy, I didn't even know who he was. He walked up to me and said, "You got to join the band. You're in the band." And I said, "Well, I can't. I'm under contract to this other band." I said, "I'd love to, but I'm under contract to this other band. I can't move." And he said, "You're out of that contract and you're playing with Average White Band, and that's it." And I thought, who the hell is this guy? I mean, he's a funny, dapper-looking little guy, little beard, little moustache, suit and everything, shirt, and it was a really smart dressed guy. I said to Bruce McCaskill, who's the band's manager, I said, "Who's that guy there?" Just told me that I had to be in the band. He said, "No, you're in the band." He said, "That's Ahmed Erdogan." So, chairman of Atlantic Records. So there it was. I was in Average White Band, and that was it.
Did you play drums on those songs, pick up the pieces and all that stuff?
No, I did the live version and pick up the pieces.
Okay. Yeah.
I did the live album version of that, and I did everything from Cut the Cake out.
Oh, so that's you on Cut the Cake?
Yeah.
Steve, you know something, man? I've been playing that wrong for so long. I think all of us have. If you had a drum set right now, I would ask you, Steve, show us the right way to play that song. Man.
Well, it's funny because Average White Band it really had a special sort of thing, and I've seen lots of drummers now playing the stuff, the Average White Band stuff, and it's really sort of minimalistic. It's one of those things where you have to really trust the groove with that band, because there's so much going on rhythmically within the band itself, and so there's always a temptation, I guess, for drummers to play a fill here and there, and Average White Band stuff really just kind of sits there in the pocket and deals with just that, and that takes some discipline to do that as well. So, I mean, I hear people play Schoolboy Crush and then they start playing these drum fills, and I'm like, that ain't it.
Since we're talking about drumming and discipline, what kind of discipline, what was in you that made you stay home, that made you stay in that pocket, that you didn't, how did you do it?
It was the band that I was working with in France. I mean, most of the, actually, also, there was two bands. There's Ronnie Jones. Ronnie Jones had a band, this guy named Ronnie Jones. I'm still in contact with. He's like 82 now, I think. And he still lives in Rome, and I'm still in contact with him. And these guys that I played with called the Piranhas, this French band called the Piranhas. And, I like any other drummer, wanted to, learn the flash stuff and all the things. And these guys really insisted that I just sort of stay with the pocket and just stay with the groove of the song.
After that, did you move on to the Saturday night live show house band?
When Average White Band finally started to drift apart, and I just moved straight into just being a studio guy. And then through that, Saturday Night Live sort of came about through that, because I was an in-town guy.
Wow. Before I get to your credits, you just make a song, make a vibe, make a rhythm feel so good. What is your approach to the drums? How do you do that? How do you just easy?
I think you just nailed it. I think about the song. I don't think about the drums. I just think about the song, and try to figure out how to make that song feel good all the way through. Beginning to end. Just the song is important.
I love what you said. You played the songs. I'm finding these days, and this was said to me, that a lot of drummers these days are playing drums and not playing music. I heard someone.
Absolutely. A lot of these young drummers that play, I mean, I guess they call it like gospel licks or stuff like that. And it's all very clever and very, very thought out, but it doesn't really say too much to me. It just seems to make this clatter that goes on, and I can't hear the song for the drummer making all this noise, It just seems to me is that, hey, stop playing the drums for a minute and think about being in a support role for that song for everybody else. Leave some space. It's just, I guess maybe it's just a fashion in a way that things are drumming now. I get people say, well, you play so simply. Well, if it's so simple, why can't everybody do it? There's a few drummers out there that can play that.
Eric Clapton.
Yeah.
Very important time in your life.
Oh, absolutely. A great band too. That was a great band to play with. Incredible band to play with. I mean, I've been blessed with the bands that I've played, Average White Band, and just some incredible players in that. Eric Clapton's band and the Heartbreakers. Probably the three bands that I was members of for a long period of time.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about the Heartbreakers here in a second. I wanted to stay on credits a little bit, and you looking at. Let me show you. Look at this. You can't see it, but man, it's like look at that. Look at that whole pack. That's just credits.
There's a lot of them. Yeah.
But one of them that strikes my fancy, and I want to talk about maybe even one more after that. Jaco Pastorius. What's that like?
Yeah, Jacko. Yeah, I used to go play with Jacko down at the 7th Avenue South with Hiram Bullock. We had what it's called the Power Trio, and I used to go down and play. And Jacko was just a phenomenal player, but he always used to say, you know, I'm just an R&B player. I'm just a funk guy. You know.
Tell me about meeting Mike Campbell, the guitarist.
Yeah.
Tom Petty and the Heartbreaks situation.
Actually, I came to find out not so long ago, a couple of years ago, after Tom died, and it was Mike that had mentioned me when they were thinking about wondering who to get to play drums on this thing, and he said, "Well, I played drums with this guy in London that was playing with George." And then I think Tom probably called George and said, "It was this guy, Steve Ferrone, that was playing with you." And George gave me a shining review. And then it was like, I got this call to come out here to do a session. And that's from Radio Registry. Remember them?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Where can you be in Los Angeles next week? The session for you. They call this booker. There was a girl out here that was booking. I forget who it was now, which one it was. And there was numerous women that had jobs of being bookers in those days. That would call you up and see if you were available for a session, and then they book you for the session, and they do all the contracting and stuff. And this girl called me up, and I said to her, "Well, who's the session for?" And she said, "Oh, it's top secret." And I said, "Top secret? Is that like code for triple scale?" Yeah, top secret was a code for triple scale. Not only have I got to play, I got to keep my mouth shut. So they flew me out and they put me in the Sportsman's Lodge Hotel. I'd never stayed in the Sportsman's Lodge Hotel, which really didn't give away anything. You know, it was just like this motel. But a lot of crew used to stay there.
What was that experience like working with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers?
Everybody should have an experience like that. I mean, talk about. I mean, we were as a band. I think that we were really in tune with each other, with music. I mean, I really liked the way that they worked on songs. I liked the way. I mean, Tom, just an incredible songwriter. We ended up working, you know, over the years, we got to work, we used to work really fast. I mean, you know, Tom would come in and we'd figure out what a song was. But through that Wildflowers, you know, I mean, Tom, it was a different sounding album for Tom. It was different than anything I'd heard him do before. And then every once in a while he'd start a song that sounded like, oh, this sounds like Tom Petty. Now we're in Tom Petty country. This is like what I'm used to hearing Tom Petty. And we play it a few times, and then he'd say, "Yeah, you know what? We've been here before." And I'm like, "Why is he throwing this song away?" You know? And then in the tour of 2017, he'd started going through this Wildflower stuff and found all these songs that he'd thrown away. And he said, "You know, I found these songs that we recorded. It's a hit record, and we didn't even put it on the album, you know." And that's how it sort of came up that, you know, on the 20th of this month, they're going to release a Wildflowers album, remixed and remastered, and they're going to they've mixed an accompanying album of the stuff that never made it onto the record, and some of the demos.
Wow.
And one of the tracks is what Kenny Arnoff cut when I was there, before I got there, and yeah.
Wow. Where were you heard of Tom Petty's passing, his transition? How did you hear about that? How did that?
I was in.
Thank you.
I was in San Francisco. I've been up there. I played a little festival in Sausalito with some friends, and I decided to come back to Los Angeles really early in the morning. I had like a 5 o'clock flight, I think, out that morning, and so I took a hotel not far from the airport, and I went to bed early that night, I think I woke up about 11 o'clock at night that night, and I thought, well, let me turn on the TV, maybe put me back to sleep again. I switched on the TV, and I was sitting there watching the massacre in Las Vegas when that gentleman decided to open fire on all those people at that festival. And all I could think of was like, man, it must be like shooting into soup, you know. I just couldn't imagine what the audience was going through. You know, it was awful. I was just shocked with that. And then my phone started to ring, and it was across the other side of the room, plugged in, and I thought, it's probably somebody from England calling me up, you know, seeing this on the news, wondering if I was there, and I'm not even going to bother answering it. So I didn't bother answering. It stopped ringing, and it started ringing again immediately afterwards. And I thought, okay, well, let me go and have a look, see who it is. You know. And I went over, and it was Ben. And hey, Ben, how you doing? I'm watching the stuff on the TV. And he said something about somebody being gone, and had a heart attack or something, and had gone. And Ben's wife was pregnant at the time, and this is how far away it seemed to me. Ben's wife is like in her 30s, right? And I thought that his wife had a heart attack, and I said, Alice had a heart attack. What are you talking about? Yeah. And he said, no, Tom's gone. And that started a whole series of stuff that was what happened. You know, he was found non-responsive, and that was all that they knew at the moment. And he said, where are you? And I said, I'm in San Francisco. I said, but I'm coming back 5 o'clock in the morning. And he said, well, they're taking him to UCLA hospital in Santa Monica. And I said, well, I'll come straight there from the airport. And then I cried. That was it. And he was my friend. He was my friend. He was not just my boss. He was my friend. I always said it shouldn't be called Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. It should be called Tom Petty in the Heartbreakers, because he was such an integral part of he wasn't just a front man. He was in that band, and he loved that band, and he loved us, and he took good care of us, and we loved each other, and he was just an amazing fellow. You know, I was privileged to work with him, a songwriter like that, a guy like that. Everybody should have a band in their life like that they where they have that kind of relationship. It was an incredible moment, and it was a night. That was a nightmare. A couple of days. It was just. I remember every second of it, being there in the hospital, and everybody sort of milling around in the hospital, and going into the room, and it was kind of dark, and Tom was on life support, so it seemed that the machine would kick, and he would sort of go like that, and then you'd get the moment of like, oh, he's coming to, you know, but he was already gone, and we just had to wait for Tony Dimitriadis, the manager, to come in from Hawaii, and Tom's brother to come in from Florida to pull the plug, basically, and then we all just sat around and watched him pass. And when he passed, the doctor came in, and checked him and he said he's gone. And then there was this wail. There was this wailing, and it was he was gone. If he was ever there in that room, you know, he was gone. But that day, I don't really revisit that day. You can probably see it's getting to me.
Yeah. I'm going to move you away from it.
No, it's okay because it's something to deal with. It's something that I feel. It's something that I feel that's important for people to know how much he meant to us.
Before I let you go here, tell me about your radio show.
Well, you know, Tom had this radio. They decided to make Tom Petty radio, and Tom was a disc jockey on there, and he had this thing called the Buried Treasure Show, where he would play not just Heartbreaker songs, but songs from his collection. And one day he said, why don't you have a show? You should have a show. You could do a show. I went, well, I don't know what's that involved. He says, all you have to do is you just pick out the songs that you want, and they give you a producer and everything. And this guy Mark Falsa, he's the producer, and he'll put everything. He'll help you do it. He said, but I really think you could do it. I said, well, okay, I'll have a go. I'll have a go at one. Why not have a go at one? See if I like it. You know? And I found out that very quickly that it's not as easy as it looks to be a disc jockey.
What's the address? Where can we find it and listen to it and so forth?
It's a Sirius Radio channel 31, I believe. It's Tom Petty Radio.
Okay.
And my show's called The New Guy Show.
Okay.
We call it The New Guy Show because Tom always said, he's only been in the band 24 years, 25 years. He's the new. We call him the new guy. So.
We do a thing on the show we call Word of Advice. Where I asked the drummers, I asked the guests if they would leave a parting word for the up-and-coming drummers, for the guys who are trying to get traction in this business. Some of the guys are already at the next level that like to know how things are done. Would you leave a word of advice for those guys?
Yeah, I would say, I would say, I don't know of anybody that's sort of come into this business that's come into it with a real plan of doing anything, of getting anywhere. They just come in because they love to play music, and it's not. I didn't start coming to be a rock star. I just wanted to beat girls. Oh, hold on, what is here? Ignore. It was something that came up. I got another meeting on Zoom that I have to get to. But I would say, just play as much as you can and enjoy it. Love it, because it's a fantastic thing to be able to do, especially even if you can't make a living at it. It's great to do for free. It's you might make a living at it. Who knows? I mean, I can't. Nobody knows what the plan is. I mean, but I can say that you can have an enormous enjoyment in making music and playing drums, and I know I do. It's a thrill every time. If I get paid or if I don't, I just really love doing it.
Steve, let me say thank you. Thank you so very much for being on the Extraordinary Drummer Show.
Well, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's great talking to you. Don't do anything I would.
I think we should do everything that you did. And I just thank you so very much. Would you help me wave goodbye to the audience?
Goodbye, everybody. Stay safe.
Yeah.